those of you who don't know me, I'm Sanin, I'm a professor here. And I am originally from Medellin, Colombia, which is the topic of our lecture today and Symposium tomorrow. This is my guardian angel. As you may have heard in the past, Medellin is a city that went in the period, a very short period of time, from being one of the most dangerous cities in the world due to the violence created by the drug cartels and let's say the deterioration of social political institutions in the city, as much as the space itself of the city, the public space of the city that became cancelled due to violence. It went from being that in a space of very few years to become a model of urban transformation that has been recognized all around the world, winning prizes from Singapore to the US, recognized in forums literally around the world. It's a process that appears almost unbelievable in terms both of the effect that it had, but also the amount of time it took, and the possibility that revealed that architecture and urbanism can operate as fundamental tools of urban and social change. For me as an architect, it's an incredibly reassuring experience to see that architecture has a role, has the ability to transform, especially connected to political vision and a political action. It's a process that cannot be assigned to a single person, institution, or moment. It took generations, it took communities, organizations from both local, from the bottom up to the top down, from international organizations. But as you know, we sometimes need to be able to measure things, and I would underline two things that were important in that process. The role of the School of Architecture, of the universities, as spaces of research and investigation of a whole generation that was committed to bring alternatives to the way that the city was being developed, and to create tools, strategies, and mechanisms, and an awareness of what architecture can do and can be in the city. That took years of at times very difficult workshops in very difficult conditions in a city that was hardly in the map around the world. I think that's one of the things that we will be talking about today and tomorrow, is the role of the university as a place of production of knowledge and engagement with the outside world, let's put it that way, and to find ways in which architecture becomes relevant and engaged in relevant ways. It works both ways. And the other was the arrival of a political figure major who had the vision and recognized that the root cause of this situation was a deep social inequality that today still exists in the city, but that needed to be recognized and addressed. In fact, when he became a mayor, he was advised to, as most mayors around the world, that he should get a branding company to be able to bring Frank Gehry or Norman Foster. The response of the mayor, in his own words, was, no, we're going to do the most beautiful buildings in the poorest areas. The most humble places will have the best architecture. And he started generating a series of public competitions where actually very young architects got some of the most interesting commissions. So this conjunction between the university as a place of knowledge and the institution of the mayor's office and many other institutions that we'll be hearing about today, the role that they play in the transformation of the city, are key. So we have divided the 2 days, today and tomorrow, where we have two guests that have been literally at the very center of that transformation. Unfortunately, our third guest had a last-minute personal problem and is unable to join us, but the three of them could be said that they were the key, literally the key figures in this process of transformation. Without them, what we're talking about probably wouldn't be taking place. As I said, we're going to divide the day into two events. Today they will be talking more, let's say, from the institutional point of view, from the institutional role they are playing or have played in the city. Tomorrow we'll be talking more about the role of the architectural project and the university as a place of production of knowledge, its engagement and responsibility, and we're hoping to have a forum and a discussion in the symposium today. I'm very, very happy to have with us two Alejandros, Alejandro Echeverri and Alejandro Restrepo. It gets more confusing because none of them is their first name. One is Carlos and the other one is Omar, but they both go to Alejandro. I have the sense that they wanted to get at the top of the poster. Very good friends, incredible people that I would like, it's probably the easiest or the hardest thing to introduce a friend, especially one you have known for a long time. Alejandro Echeverri, my opposite, my yin and yang, he's an architect from Medellin, Colombia. We met while I was teaching at the Architectural Association in London, and he was studying and working in there. Since then, he engaged in his own private practice, also worked with the Mayor Fajardo at that determining time, 2004 and 2008, developing a series of projects for the city, which we'll be hearing about. First as the director of the EDU, the Empresa de Desarrollo Urbano, the Enterprise of Urban Development, and then as the director of strategic projects for the city, which is a figure that was a new figure created by the mayor, different from the director of urban planning, which is engaged in literally the exercise of planning. These projects, as you will see, was called, this political project was called social urbanism for reasons that I think will be apparent to you. Since then, we worked together at some point to create an urban research center. He's now the director, and as such, it's called URBAM, in a university called EAFIT, that curiously enough was founded 60 years ago by Syracuse University with the help of Syracuse University. We just found out recently, so we're trying to untangle that relationship. As director of Urban, he has continued to be a consultant and to develop really fundamental research at multiple scales, both at the city and the territorial scale. He has recently been a law fellow at Harvard University, got the Obashi Prize in Japan for green buildings, the Corazon Prize here in the States, the Veronica Roach Green Prize Award at Harvard, has lectured internationally from South Africa to Singapore to Japan, Brazil, Venice, Munich, everywhere else. A great architect, thinker, strategic planner, educator. We also have Alejandro Restrepo, who is the current director of strategic projects in the city, so in a way, the successor of Alejandro Echeverri. He's also an architect from the University Bolivariana in Medellin, has a degree in business management, and he's currently doing a doctorate at the Technical University in Munich. Is teaching at Munich and Berlin Technical University, and also at the ETH in Zurich. Has won a number of prizes, from the Holcim Prize to the different prizes in the Biennale, Latin American Biennales, and otherwise. He's engaged in a very important work right now, which is the recuperation of the city center of Medellin, which I think is a fundamental project. He's also scientific ambassador of the German government in terms of research. And I couldn't be more proud and more happy to have these two key figures to be with us today to share their experiences. And I hope you will join us not only today as you have, and I thank you for that, but also tomorrow for the symposium, where there will be a much more ample space to discuss both the institutional aspect, the educational aspect, and to engage in discussion and conversation. So please, I invite Alejandro Echeverri to join. Please. My ADD, despite everything, the nervousness, I forgot the most important introduction and thank to do. About 6 years ago, an ex-alumni of the school decided that he would help our students to engage in really important experiences. Understanding that what has happened in architecture has become a global phenomenon, that we needed exposure to do so. And I was lucky enough to be engaged with Rubin, supported by him and his family, to travel with the students to, that first trip was to Copenhagen. And it's a great pleasure to see that the circle has come now to Medellin, where Rubin supports the visiting Greek studio, the Rubin Global Design Studio, to visit Medellin. And it's interesting that the two brackets from Copenhagen, that has become this sort of model of the perfect city, and Medellin, the not so perfect, but probably much more vital and dynamic and challenging, seems to bracket what has been an incredible support and a very generous one that comes both from a personal interest, but also a very generous attitude towards the student, the school, and to myself. So I want to thank him, and with that, I pass the microphone to Alejandro.
So Francisco, thank you very much. For me, it's an honor to be here in the School of Architecture of Syracuse. How Francisco said we have a close relation in history. I came from a Free University, and our origin is very connected with Syracuse as well. So thank you as well to Todd and to the School of Architecture for the invitation. I would like to share some of the processes that we have been doing and we developed in Medellin as well. And for me, it's an honor as well to be with a very close friend, Alejandro Restrepo. Different Alejandro, Francisco. It's not a very good coincidence, but okay, with the name. So this is a privilege for me to be here, being with Francisco and Alejandro. In different moments of my time, both of them, we have been very close, and they were very important in my life as well. But we all together are very connected with architecture and the reality of Medellin. So I don't know, it's a coincidence of that, but in different moments we meet each other in different places and discussions and the reality of the city. For some of you that don't know, where is Colombia? So, Colombia is here, connected with Panama, and is the link between the Caribbean Ocean, Atlantic, and Pacific Sea here. So, Colombia is the #1 in diversity of birds and second in the world in biodiversity in general. So this happens because it has a very strategic location in relation with the tension of geography. The Andean Mountains ends in Colombia. The Amazon is 1/3 part of the country, the south, and links the Atlantic and the Pacific as well. Maybe this could be a reason because some other people discovered that this strategic location helps for the business of drugs and so on. So Colombia, the history of Colombia is an extreme, a good history as well, but we have been having a very hard moments in relation with illegality and violence as well. But Medellin is located, this is the Andean Mountains that divided in 3 corridors: west, the central corridor, and the east corridor. So our region is here, and is a region of mountains. So not only our city, but we live going up and going down in constant movement. So this is Amazon, our Amazon, that is connected with the jungle of Amazon, the Caribbean, and the Pacific here, and links with Panama. So Medellin is located here, and it used to be the industrial city of Colombia, one of the biggest groups in relation with retail, insurance, banks. So the economy is very important in relation with all the processes in Colombia, but for you and internationally unfortunately, the name of Medellin and Colombia is connected in some way with drugs as well. Medellin is a long valley that is close to 30 kilometers long and in average maybe 6 kilometers wide. But and we have a very a city that is the geomorphology and the river and the ravines that goes down from the two sides of the mountains define the structure of the city, but at the same time it's a very segregated city. You know that Latin America is the most unequal continent in the world, and our cities are the expression of that with Medellin. So the north, I am going to talk to you mostly about the process of the poorest part of the city, the north, where the 40% of the population live there. I'm not going to explain where all the corporations and different parts of the city, and we have two completely different realities. This is a picture that a local artist, it's not a picture, it's a mosaic. My English sometimes, Francisco, is not very good, sorry. And this is a mosaic that Perez, a painter from one of the barrios of Medellin, did so many years ago, but for me it's a beautiful description, a very precise description of the territory of Medellin itself, because you can understand Medellin in a cross-section. Going down from the mountains, where it's still the active occupation of informal housing. This is a recent picture in relation of the active occupation. I am going to explain to you most of the process and project belong to the middle of the hill, where it used to be informal, used to be periphery, but today they have a more consolidated condition. And this is the access of the river where corporations and downtown that I'm going to explain to you. So, but at the same time, you understand that the geology, the water range, so this complex situation that links geography with people, the territory, and the urban processes as well. So this image is the plan of the city. This is the river. You see all the creeks that goes down, more than 200 creeks in the territory of the city as well. So it's an important opportunity, but at the same time it's a problem. And in the dark browns are the poorest areas of the city. So this is the northeast. I will explain to you some actions here and the telepheric and urban interventions and here as well. And this is the south and the other areas of the city. So you see here, we are located in the northeast with the cable carries, some very strong problems and complexity as well. And this is the downtown and the south, where the richest part of the people and the middle classes and so on. This is a beautiful plan as well, and very precise plan. José Luis Sert and Paul Lesterville. José Luis Sert at that time was in Boston, and he did the pilot plan for the city, and was the first time when appeared a plan that described precisely the condition of nature, like a driving logic and force to define in some way the future structure of the city. Not everything happened, very few things happens after, but this condition of the creeks and the complexity of occupation, and I will show you most of the process that happens out of the boundary that they define, like the limit of the city at that time in 1949. Medellin has maybe 350,000 inhabitants at that time. Today, the metropolitan area has more than 3.5 million. So this explosive process of growing is close to impossible to plan. So this is the natural structure of the city. I'm not going to explain in detail, but I always like to show, because I think how to find a very precise systems that could help you to design, to support some strategic actions, and to describe the territory. So you could follow each creek and you can understand the whole history in relation with social behavior and the urban fabric and the built environment. So this structure for me is a future for the future more than the present. because this is a huge challenge. But the reality and the things that happened in Medellin was for us together as well, and for many other people, was part of our life and was really strong. So this picture belongs to 2002, where when war happens in La Comuna 13, the Comuna 13, the Orion operation from the army bombed from helicopters the barrios of Medellin. So, because we have like a war, 2002 was yesterday, so it was very close. So this picture as well is the expression that we lose the public space, we lose the streets. You cannot be out of your house after 5 p.m. So this condition to have confidence with the other, how to move through the city as well, was really a problem. So that gives us a completely different meaning of the public space and the social relations in the urban and in the cities as well. So that was one of the questions, and I think you will see some of the actions that try to recover this transparency and condition and give people confidence to use the public space and so on. And the other picture is the extreme opposite. This is the living room of Jose Luis Serpa in Boston in 1950. I'm not sure what it could be. And this is the picture of the plan of Medellin at that time. So this condition of the abstraction of the city and the image that a person that thinks Medellin from outside is important in some way because he discovers something, but as well this distance sometimes and is always a problem. So how to connect with the reality those two images has to be with our work like an architect and urbanist as well. How to develop abstraction, giving distance to the reality, but develop innovation as well in a very close proximity with the condition of the local condition. Those two images as well belong to Medellin when Pablo Escobar died in 1993. All my life happens through the 80s and 90s and 2000. And Medellin, through these many different processes as well, so we are not the best city in the world, of course, but Medellin changed us. And I think that we are starting to change the reality. I cannot say that everything changed. You cannot change a city in 8 years or even 10 years. But my experience as well changed thanks to some people, writers, film directors, that they did beautiful testimonies of our tragedy, but as well of our possibilities. So when I was, 20-something, I read this small book, No Nacimos Pa Semilla, and for me, changed my perspective, moved my interest to work in the north of the city. In some way, I was a young architect at that time, or I was studying architecture as well, how to use my tools and the knowledge and to move as well our questions to that territory. And this is another film that is in the web as well. Rodrigo de Futuro is a very strong movie, was one of the first, that described the life of some of the milicianos, the maras, if I can say, we don't use the word mara, but some young groups that worked with the narco business mans, and but seeing the city from the distance as well, playing rock, but as well with a very violent reality. So this guy, and this part of the history, became mayor after some years. So those testimonies changed a lot and changed the priority of some people of Medellin. I am not going to explain you the history because you cannot say that from this year changed everything. Everything is a process. And the people move from one side from another, but this reality opened in general some questions in the city, so from education, from architecture, from social work, so the people start to try to find different ways to understand. And politics changed as well. the crisis changed the politics. When we were at the university, I was at that time in the University Bolivariana, another one where I studied. Alejandro, we met at that time there as well in some research groups. So we started to work in the workshop to the north, a specific group trying to develop research for the north part of the city, and we started to develop and to do some public discussions about public transport systems and process of occupation in the newspaper of a local newspaper, and some research that connect this condition of the north, the geomorphology, the people, the urban fabric, and so on. So many things change. The city passed from a very strong moments as well, and opened at the space that to appear some civic leaders that decided to be part of politics, because at that time many different ONGs, civic leaders, intellectuals, and so on decide that crisis needs us or something like that. So open a very special space of politics, and Sergio Fajardo, that is in the image, became a mayor. He won the election in 2003, and like me and other people, he invited me and many others to join him with different knowledge as well. So we went inside the government and we started to develop with him and to connect with him other processes, very good processes that started before. But at that moment, for me, was not the invention, but he built a space and accelerated the process as well. So this image belongs to today as well. So the city developed a lot of architecture, public spaces, teleférico system that connects the barrios. So this happens, and for you and for some of you, maybe you knew more or know more about architecture. But I will explain not this insulated pieces of architecture. I will explain you the process that is the base where the architecture happens. That is the process of urban processes, the work with community, and so on. So at that time, we start to define an idea that we call at the time social urbanism. It's not all the urbanism are social, are connected with social, but the idea was to give priority with some principles: the ethics, the inclusion, the public space, the proximity and the work with community, and as well the design and the beauty to work with the people. So at that time we defined, we can say today, at that time we didn't call the strategies, the 7 strategies, but today we see that we can define 7 main ideas that helps the process when we work with the government. Zones in actions to select specific zones, to develop in those some holistic processes that combine physical transformation and programs as well. So defining a very clear strategic actions, physically but as well in programs, and develop a transparency and confidence in the territory. How to expand the image of the city, to hold different parts of the city with public transport system, the design, the quality as well. The most important is to have proximity and to define and work in the local scale, in the scale that permit that the people could be part of the processes as well. And how to develop processes more than projects in relation to the continuity and to use the architecture and urban design like key of the processes. So, at that time, I am talking about 2004, we select 3 areas, very strategic areas that some of them metropolitan areas that are key areas that connect some of the poorest barrios with some possibilities. This is the metro line, this is a new park, Explora Park, the transformation of the botanical garden. So this how to develop a confluence of programs and systems that connect one to each other in some areas. Was not possible to transform the whole body of the city as well, but when you have 4 years and then 8 years, you have to be very strategic in relation to ensure that the processes produce real changes that permit continuity. So the city at that time defined close to 6 strategic areas. On the periphery, most of them, connected with the barrios as well, but connected as well with some strategic links like the telepheric or cable car to connect with the metro that take the people to the system of the city. So this is one area that you see the cable car station, a new library park, that the teleférico that goes up to the barrios, and this is the other area. So this first idea of how to select a strategic condition with a specific size that permit you to develop like an interconnected chain of projects, of programs are very important. How to develop as well in the territorialistic processes. One of the problems that the governance has as well, and the architecture itself, is how to combine some infrastructure like accessibility to improve the housing problem, build new housing, public transports here, library park here, how to use the different tools, the distances, the itineraries of the people, using architecture and design in some way. So this picture is showing you one of the most successful transformation of Medellin, but it still be a challenge because you cannot change all the problems. But you could select like the nervous system, the primary systems, to improve and to connect around each station. The cable car Andalusia station, the teleférico, the second station is Popular, and the third station is here, Santo Domingo, with the library park, is as well how to connect some itineraries and so on. So this idea was a careful selection of projects that belong to different conditions, connected with the environment. We covered some ravines, some problems of housing, some public spaces as well. But at the same time, the urban design and the urban process was the tool to locate on the territory in a very careful steps different programs of education, of social work, of culture, and so on. So the urban design and the physical transformation was together with a programmatic action working with community. So a process started to develop in the upper part with the cable car station seat, the library and the cable car, but the most important is the space in between, the streets, the plazas. Change the experience of the people. So happens as well as a public school here, and the city developed a strong network of public schools and improve of the barrios. This school was the National Prize of Architecture, a friend of us designed the school, Carlos Pardo, and some process of housing that improved some housing and relocate in the same place the housing. So all the process happens in the same territory, interconnected, the different systems in relation with a specific scale. The third idea, that this idea of linked strategic projects, belong to the local scale, permit the people to connect the itineraries of the common life, that these are the more important thing, but as well how to connect with the city, because the teleférico station connects the metro system and expands the possibility of the mobility. So this process of linked strategic projects is very important because permit the people from the barrio La Francia to connect with the people from the barrio Andalusia, and to go and to take the station as well, and to start to recover the problem of the informal occupation of the creek. So the city developed, innovate in relation how to develop and create some up corridors that permit the people in bikes and walk, goes to different and connect the houses, and as well some systems like electric public escalators that take the people from the upper part of the city to some public transport system in the lower part, to take the buses and the metro and so on. But the reality is that, and thinking from today, after maybe 13 years or 15 years of experience, for me the most powerful thing is to change the experience of the common life of the people. So the public space and the street. This is when you go to Medellin, your image is not an image of the building. It's an image of the experience walking the streets between the buildings and between the stations. So this space to work with community, to develop with them some priorities that belong to some small-scale projects, permit to expand the opportunity of dialogues and to take decisions as well. Because if you think only in big infrastructure or big architectural projects, it's impossible to develop a collaboration or co-creation process. So you have to think that the scale and the dimension of that are very important in this relation. So some of the strategy happened in a very simple way. This is the station, the transformation and the improvement of the Rambla Andalusia, the Paseo, that changed from 18 small business to more than 300 business through 4 years, because the Paseo was connected again with the barrios to the sides, some links and new bridges here and so on. So in the other station as well, the itinerary of the people is very important. This is the telepheric station that goes to a new Mirador public park that connects with the Library of Spain. That was a competition after the transformation of this area, and this connect with another street and corridor again with the cable car stations, and this corridor connect with the sport facility. So those itineraries are really important in relation to transform the reality. So one thing that we learned, and we work a lot today in our research center, is the concept of the processes. So this, always we develop urban projects and architecture as well, and you want to transform and to open the space to engage different people and different actors. It's important to understand that this has to happen in different moments, and as well that you open a process that has to expand in the future and open different opportunities. So the architecture and the urban design and the landscape architecture and design as well is a beautiful opportunity if you think that you could lead some processes that when the physical transformation of the space could be and could push so many other processes as well and engage some part of the community. This idea for me is important in relation that if you ask me what is the most important thing in Medellin, because we still have a lot of problems today, and we cannot say that the city is ready. The same challenges exist. The reality today is that we have some models or some examples that could help us to improve and to develop new questions as well. But this idea of the consensus, in specific moments of the city, to have the possibility to develop a narrative, a history as well, and that the architecture and the urban transformation could be part of this narrative is very important. So this idea that we have to recover the confidence of the public space, that we have to recover the possibility to connect with each other, that the physical space is part of this experience, as it is a key part of our life, was very important, and the architecture was a very powerful tool. So we combine urban design, urban transformation, programs, etc., but as well some very powerful pieces of architecture that could be part of the history and could express and give meaning to those processes. This is the Orchard Hall or the Botanical Garden. Is a very simple infrastructure in the middle of the public park today in Medellin that is very important as well. This image belongs to today. I was reading today El País is the most important newspaper of Spain, and this said La Fiesta del Libro. Okay, it's not here, but the text says orchards and books in the north of the city. One of the most beautiful spaces in Medellin is the north. I will tell you that. And one of the most beautiful moments of Medellin is happening today. That is the books fair. That is an open fair that connects so many different places in the north. So it's not a fair of books only that happens in one center. It happens in the streets and connected with different areas. So Hector Abad, one of our writers, is remembering the people what happened at that time before in this area. And this is another image that helped me as well to explain to you what means narrative. This is a exercise that we develop in our university. We have a program that the name is the Children's School. Once a month, 1,500 kids from the different schools of the city goes to the university to answer one question. And we ask those kids, we ask the kids which is the area that they use the most and they like the most in the everyday life. And making it close to the 70% of the kids selects with color papers new areas of the city. So you cannot say that the city is ready, but you can think that if you multiply for 100 or 200, those places you can transform the life of the people in some way. After this experience in government, like Francisco said, we start to ask that we need a different center, a think tank that could expand the ideas and to recover as well. And I wanted to return to the university, and with Francisco and others and so on, we start to think in a new center that could as well expand those ideas, but in the academy and doing research and so on. So we think, and I think that some ideas were very important, and we learned from this experience that this idea of people, narrative, and proximity is very important for urban design and as well landscape design, in relation that you have the possibility to write new histories with communities, and this idea of history and narrative behind, on the back of the projects, is a very important thing, because you work with people, and if you have that idea from the beginning, you develop the process really different. So the idea of the size and the dimension of the project's connected with action is very important. I told you that if you think always only in the big infrastructural projects, it's not possible to develop local processes, so this combination is very important, how to develop possibilities to connect to each other. So in our experience and in the case of Medellin, you cannot develop processes that are not connected with nature and the environment as well. Always the problems and the opportunities are connected with geography, geology, the rain conditions, and so on. So this dialogue of infrastructure and environment was a key part of our center as well. So our center is a transdisciplinary center that develop processes and projects connecting infrastructure with environment today, and always of the priority of inclusion, because we are in a continent that we need this idea always that have to be present. So I'm not going to explain. We develop project processes in different scales in the upper part of the city. We develop as well renewal processes and so on. So I am going very fast to the end of my talk because I have 5 minutes, or less than 5 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes. So tomorrow I will explain with more detail some of the processes and as well the approach of the urban design and some of the processes that we are doing in our center. But as well, the most important thing for us is to have a clear question and to develop research that connect as well with reality in some way. So this is a process that we are doing today that start like a research. We start with Harvard University, and we are doing now with the Leibniz University of Heidelberg, because the researcher, our friend, is Christian Wertmann, that moved to one side to another. I'm going to explain that, but we would like to move the question not to the middle of the hill where you can develop and solve problems with infrastructure. We move to the upper part of the hill where you have to work with community and environment. and more than processes than infrastructure as well. So we develop a process, we design a process with community to anticipate and mitigate the risk, trying to work with green infrastructure, and so on. And at the same time, we work in our center with the problem of the country, that we are in a peace process and we need a new narrative in the country in relation with some rural areas and how to develop some possibilities of improvement of the quality of life with some communities as well in a very challenged conditions as well. Working with communities, trying to develop some infrastructure. So that those processes bring us again to that idea of inclusion as well, but the idea of think that we could develop processes together from the beginning in relation that connect infrastructure, urban design, and urban as well landscape design with environment and people. So we are exploring and moving, working with governments, we're working with community, through our master program as well, but through our consulting, because we work with governments trying to develop those processes. So I'm sorry, Francisco, but... So, this is not a very beautiful picture, I must say. So I want to end with this picture because we're visiting the campus today. But you cannot disconnect the history of the process of architecture and the transformation of Medellin from the people. So we belong to 3 different generations, Francisco. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So, but you can in some way, you can understand in some way the process, how the architectural happens in the city through our life itself. In relation, we are really connected in different moments with academy. So Francisco internationally, as I was in Colombia, in Barcelona, and then go back to Colombia and work with the government. Alejandro is más joven, a younger guy. And he studied in Germany, and then he's with the government as well. This is a very exceptional condition that the architects have the possibility to be part of the real process of the city, and the research that we develop in the academy connects in some way with the reality of the communities, but as well use the reality to develop processes and to the research and innovate. This is like a cycle that I think is not an ideal cycle, but is happening in Medellin. So that was completely different 20 years ago. So the architects and designers didn't take part of the decisions of the city. So you cannot say that the architecture and the urban design changes. It's not possible to say that. But we could say that we have been part of the transformation, and the young generation of the city is really connected with the whole, the reality, and with the conditions, the complex condition of our society. So you see today processes of arts, film, different expressions, and so on, and the designers and competition that has a completely different narrative and connection with the reality. Completely different when I was studying at the architecture school of Medellin. So that thing permit me to say that we still have in a very big challenge in our society in Colombia as well. But for me, I think that we have in our hands a very beautiful and powerful tool to work with others, to help and to innovate in the way and in the direction to try to improve the quality of life of the people. So, thank you very much.
Okay, good afternoon. I would like to thank Professor Francisco Sanin, the Dean Michael Speaks, Mr. Todd Rubin too, and the entire team at the University of Syracuse Faculty of Architecture for having invited us. I also want to thank you, dear students, especially for being here. Medellin, like Alejandro explained it, is a mixture of stories and contrasts. Our city has been constructed in different manners, between the legal and the illegal, between the pain and hope. In this conversation, I will talk about the city center of Medellin, and the city center is very related with the peripheries of the city. We can explain that we are speaking from the north to the center part of the city. And I will explain too how the topography of the city influences its conformation. This is our environmental and urban current situation. We can see the Medellin River. The north is right now on the left. This is the Medellin River. And we can see the mountains of the valley, the east and the west, and three hills, very important and very close to the city center. This is the Volador Hill, or Cerro El Volador. This is the Nutibara Hill, and this is the Asomadera Hill. They are in the perimeter of the city central area. If Medellin begins a plan to revitalize its watersheds on the mountains, we could link them with the river and begin to articulate the city as an ecosystem by the route of its waters and the topography. A second aspect in this lecture is the mobility as a structuring element to the public space. In the city center of Medellin, the yellow line here follows the route of the tram of the Ayacucho Way. Maybe we will work with the University of Syracuse in this part of the city in the workshop directed by Francisco Sanin. The blue line is the metro from south to north and from north to south and from the city center to the west. And the red line is the Metro Plus. This is a system of urban transport in Medellin. Between this street, this is the city center, this is the Calle San Juan, this is the Avenida Oriental, this is the Bazar de los Puentes, and this is the Avenida del Ferrocarril. We can decide about a ring of mobility that is structured to define new vocations in the city center. 20 kilometers of non-motorized mobility will articulate the connections among the public spaces, activities and buildings in the city center of Medellin. Another topic is the articulation between the public spaces of the city center. From its environmental corridors, the hills El Volador, here, right now, the north is on the left side, Nutibara and Asomadera, and the botanical garden in the north part of the city center, very close to the north part of the city, define the presence of natural structures on the perimeter of the city center. This is the Medellin River, you can see that, and that crosses the city from south to the north. This is the way to the water in Medellin. It is articulated with the base of the hills Nutibara and El Volador. And this is the Avenida La Playa, from the east part of the city center to the Cerro El Volador. From the Carrera Junín here in this point, this is called the Avenida Primero de Mayo, and from this point, this is the Museum of Antioquia, it's called the Avenida de Grave. And this is related with the Cerro El Volador and with the Iguana watershed to connect another urban project of the city in relation with the city center. There are other ways They are the Carrera Juan del Corral. This is linked with the city center too. Avenida San Diego is also connected with the city center from the south to the north, the Calle Los Huesos, and another kind of streets, for example, Calle Argentina, that are in progress in design to relation these neighborhoods and this part of the city with the city center. From the south to the north, Paseo Bolívar here and Carrera Junín, this is Junín and this is Paseo Bolívar, reduced the vehicular traffic and prioritized the area for pedestrians. The center of Medellin could be an urban ecosystem articulated with the hills, or cerros in Spanish, with the river and with 40 parks, with the urban structure of the city. Now I want to present you some projects of the plan. The first one is the Avenida La Playa. It is an environmental axis that crosses the city center from the east to the west. This is an initial view of the Avenida La Playa. The photo is maybe 15 or 16 years old. And this is the Quebrada Santa Elena, an original way of the water in this part of the city. 50 years ago, or maybe 60 years ago, due to the dumping of contaminated water, it was covered. And this is the current state of the Avenida La Playa. 2 vehicular lanes to the north and south park, and 3 more vehicular lanes in the central part of the Avenida La Playa. 50 years ago, we had the water line in this position. The project proposes expand the public space to the sites in this way, and when the city ensures the dumping of clean water to the Quebrada Santa Elena here, we can reopen the road to see the water again. This photo is toward the east, and this is the project that extends the sidewalls to articulate them with cultural spaces, parks, urban transport, stations, public spaces, and housing in the city center. This is the existing section towards the east, and this is the proposal that incorporates new sidewalks and gardens in the Avenida La Playa. This is the current state of the crossroads, and this is the proposal that searches new public spaces, gardens, and planting more than 250 trees in this part of the city. And in the western section, the current state is this. And the proposal to expand public spaces, sidewalks, and gardens defines the new intervention in the Avenida La Playa. Continuing along the Avenida La Playa, we find a new urban project designed by architects and Professor Carlos Puerta and Verónica Ortiz through a public competition of architectural ideas. The original state of the street had these conditions, and the proposal reduces from 3 to 2 the vehicular lanes. It incorporates a bike route in this part of the project and expands the sidewalks. This is the Avenida La Playa facing west, and this is the proposal with new natural shade, sidewalks, and urban transport stops in this public space. And the Avenida de Grave is the connection between the city center with the Cerro El Volador and with the Quebrada La Iguana in this point of the city. This is the current state of the area. And this is the urban proposal that incorporates the private enterprise for the real estate development and economic reactivation of the area. The Avenida Oriental is a road axis that crosses the city center from south to the north in this part, and is another urban corridor that will be intervened. This is the current state. The urban design aims to increase the amount of plant species in the Avenida Oriental, and the concrete prisms that you can see that were built 12 or 14 years ago to reduce the accident rate of the pedestrians. The project achieved this goal, but now plant species, gardens and trees will be planted at the beginning of the next year in this project. This is another part of the Avenida Oriental. This is in the South Park. This is very close with the San Jose Church. This is the current state. And this condition can have today these characteristics with the new project. A network of electric urban buses will have stops too on the central separators in this point. To improve urban transport mobility and other kind of environmental qualities of the street. And another project is Galeria Bolivar at this point, from south to the north. It's another street that crosses the city center too. And that presents these characteristics with 4 vehicular lanes in this point and in this point. It has been proposed as a cultural street with new trees and gardens that generates new urban conditions in the city center. This is the current west section of the street. And this is the project designed too by the architects and professors, Carlos Puerta and Verónica Ortiz, winners of a public competition in the last public administration too. Another project is the Paseo Commune. This is a very traditional street in Medellin, the city center, and it presents this current condition in the city center. Its lanes will be reduced from 3 to 1 in order to pedestrianize another area of the urban space. Another urban corridors such as Boyacá, Pichincha in this part of the city, Maturin and Amador will connect the city, in the city center to the city, which currently look like this kind of corridors. And they will have new gardens and trees, spaces for public transports and parks that are articulated with the urban ecological networks. To the west of the intervention is the Sagrado Corazon neighborhood. This is the current state of the Sagrado Corazon. Today, this part of the city center has this condition. This is a very important church in the city. It was designed by Agustin Goubarts from Belgium. And this zone will have the possibility to generate new public spaces, streets and plazas that are articulated with the city center of Medellin. An intervention project in 40 parks in the city center of Medellin, they are in green too, will generate new urban conditions in different places, such as Parque de Bolívar. This is the current state of the Parque de Bolívar. This is a patrimonial urban space that will expand the sidewalks to increase the proportion of public space for the citizens. This is the northwest side of the park. And this is the URBAM proposal to the park, to the Bolívar Park, of Parque de Bolívar. Towards the southeast side, the intervention proposes the care of patrimonial buildings, the expansion of the sidewalks in this point, the reduction of vehicular routes too, and an increase in the presence of the vegetation to have more natural shadows and to improve our environmental conditions here. In the Sagrado Corazon area, another urban park generates new conditions for the use of public spaces. Another topic is the patrimony and memory in Medellin. The center of Medellin has 84 buildings that have been declared local or national architectural patrimony too. Their locations are in some areas, here in orange, of the urban projects that I showed you. There is the Museum of Antioquia, one very important building in the memory of Medellin. There is a building where the office of the mayor of the city functioned until 1985. And the direction of the museum has decided to open its windows to place its most important works towards the street. This is the painting Horizontes. It was painted by Francisco Cano in 1913. In addition to its cultural work, the Museum of Antioquia has undertaken social work, caring for children of women who work in the sector. We are designing a kindergarten for them, which will be located in one of the spaces of the Casa del Encuentro. This is a building next to the Museum of Antioquia. A recycling of the interior space allows us to take these conditions and make a new home for 65 children in the city center. Another topic is the housing. In terms of housing, the city center of Medellin has a territorial ordering plan, and this territorial ordering plan has proposed the construction of 5,000 new housing units in the city center of Medellin. The strategy that we have started has been to take lots belonging to the municipality, where small buildings for 10 or 20 families could be built to activate simultaneously different spaces in the city center. In the territorial plan, we have some neighborhoods like San Benito, Estación Villa, the Colón neighborhood, very close to the municipality offices and the government offices, Calle Nueva, and another neighborhood, Perpetuo Socorro, that are related or linked with the city center with these streets. And to finish, where we started this lecture, I would like to explain you some ideas about our hills. They are natural pantries of fauna and flora, like botanical gardens with public spaces. This is the proposal for the Cerro Tibara, developed by architects Jorge Huitrago, Jaime Cabal. Another office is Colectivo 720, and the office from Sebastián Monsalve, Latitude, is called this office. So a public architectural competition too. This is another project. This is called La Asomadera, and it was developed for or designed by another office of architecture in Medellin. This is called Con Natural, with the architects Edgar Mazo and Sebastián Mejía. They were winners of another public architectural competition in Medellin. Finally, I want to emphasize that Medellin is the result of the work of several generations of architects. Some of them are professors in our faculties of architecture, and today we are temporary actors with a defined period of time. We must take the testimony that others have left us and continue with this task to deliver our work to those who succeed us. To the students and professors who are here, I want to reiterate that architecture can improve the quality of life in our cities and the quality of life of the people who live there. In Medellin, with different projects in the north part of the city, in the hills, or in the city center, work and hope continue to live on. Tomorrow we will speak about another projects, about another investigations in the faculties, about another developments related with the technical part of the architecture, with the bioclimatic condition of the city center, and with the development of another kind of ideas in our faculties. 20 minutes, that's it. Thank you very much.
So now you can see why we need to follow up tomorrow. Consider this the introduction. I know it's gone a little bit long. If you have any questions, you will be more than happy to answer them. Or otherwise, we can follow it up tomorrow when I think we'll have time to expand some of the issues that were presented today. Good. Can you?
Hi, thank you. My question was for either Alejandro. How do you deal with public rebuttal of limiting or eliminating vehicular accessibility to the central zones of the city?
I'm sorry, it's for me?
Either one.
Okay, I'm sorry, it was reading here. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah. How do you deal with the public kind of rejecting this idea of eliminating or even just limiting vehicular traffic coming in through the central zones of the city?
About the resources.
No, it's about it assumes that the public is rejecting the idea of limiting private cars to go into the city center.
Okay, the question is for Sorry.
Yes, in our city center we have very strong vehicular traffic, public transport, individual or private transport, and we would like to make a proportion between the areas for pedestrians and the areas that the public transports and the cars and motorized movement or transportation takes in the cities. We are reducing 50% of the areas for motorized transport to give them to the citizens another kind of transport, for example, bike routes, for example, pedestrian zones, and to integrate another public spaces with the city. And this is a very complex work. We have to speak with the mobility office of the city to reorganize the urban transport routes around the city center in this ring that you saw. For example, between the most important venues in the city center, the border of the city center, San Juan, Avenida Oriental, San Pedro, we will take the urban transport, the major part of the urban transport will be around this zone of the city center. And the another routes are touching this ring to give the people to the another urban transfers, for example, the metro lines, for example, the train, and for example, another kind of transport like metrobus, like buses, and the new public electrical mobilization and transports in the city center of Medellin. I have to say that this is a very, very complex work. This is a work with another teams of the municipality, and it will be implemented the next year in 5 months. With the works, with the constructions, we will implement it in the city center of Medellin.
So I would like to say something because this process is going to be a challenge. So you know that in Latin American cities and in cities like ours, so the public transport system and the transport system belongs to the formal and informal. And those companies are really complex to solve. So I think Alejandro showed us some of the urban strategies, but it has to be another layers, and you have, how you say, in relation how to develop it with a careful combination of not only new agreements and new business and new conditions with the companies of the transport that combines the public leadership and the private as well. So that I think it takes long time, but as well it's important to develop different strategies about regulation in relation with some new impuestos, how do you say? Taxes, and so to develop these different strategies and to go each step to develop the process, I think so.
There's another question.
Well, thank you both. It's extremely encouraging and inspiring to see this actual discussion tonight, especially being back in the United States after living in Holland for 6 or 7 years. And part of that started teaching and adult, and very much what you've done today is what we've kind of always done, but teaching. I do think it's missing. I think so far my observation being back in the United States. My question is the scales of dimension of architecture that has transcended the site. You looked at the country and the 30-kilometer river before you get to the site itself. Is that something that's embedded in the architectural education in Colombia, or is it something that you have developed or saw as a necessity in approaching architecture?
I think it's, as well, it's a consequence of reality in relation with, in our case, that so we share many ideas, but as well we belong to different processes. So in our case, when we were working with the municipality, I'm talking about 2003, our challenge was to move from the general ideas of the urban planning that still exist in some of the strategies of the city, to as well to connect those processes with urban design and local scales, using architecture and as well urban transformation. And this is is very difficult to have continuity in our political reality. So Medellin is being some kind of exception, but saying that is fragile. So you cannot, from my point of view, you cannot develop the classical approach of planning the general idea and then reduce on one thing in 30 years, how to develop all the processes. From my point of view, but it's my personal view, has to be simultaneous. And sometimes this is one of the reasons, because some systems that belongs and give the identity of the cities and the territories are very important. So we talk about the ravines and the river like a big basin in relation with the structure of the city. So acting in some specific points of the system, you can replicate and you can think in a bigger scale. So this idea to move from the small scale to the bigger scale is very important, and to select a very strategic action that belongs to one singular condition, but could be part of a system as well. And that gives you a power in relation with architecture and urban design. So you could develop a local process, but thinking that that process could be connected with others and give an example to the others. And could be developed in 3 years or 4 years, and then in another process that connects with that. So this idea to move in relation with the scales, I think, is not an intellectual approach, it's the reality in relation that force you to develop some local strategies to transform the reality in the local scale, and then to expand and to think again in the bigger scale. It's my thinking.
Yes, another thing about that. I would like to explain the role of faculties of architecture in the city with this idea. In the 70s and in the 60s, some professors of the National University in Colombia, the Faculty of Architecture, and another professors of the Faculty of Architecture at the University Pontificia Bolivariana developed some plans, urban theoretical plans, about the river in Medellin 40 years ago. 4 or 3 years ago, the previous administration made a competition with some ideas from these plans that belong to the universities. And 40 years later, we could make this plan and give them to the reality. And another projects are still working in the universities. For example, the dwellings for Medellin, the social housing, the connection between the north part of the city with the city center, the connection between the hills to the city center. They are projects that were developed too in the faculties of architecture in the city. Some professors of the faculty of architecture were to the government to make the reality with these plans and with these ideas. This is a very important relation between the academy and the academic conditions with the reality in Medellin.
Thanks. It's a very interesting set of lectures and a very interesting case study, I think, for our students to see, in fact, the world, how cities can change, how you get the political mobilization and transformation in order to get this to happen. It's nothing short of remarkable. I think my question is connected to that. You had mentioned that in order to build new narratives, the first step was to have recognition of the different parties, to, I suspect, understand their situation, understand their needs, understand their worries, what threatens them, that kind of thing. How do you get that first step to happen? Because I think, particularly here in the United States, we seem to be in a place where everybody builds walls as soon as, if we want to try and create dialogue, people just shut that down. And how do you, I suspect it wasn't that much different, maybe use different means to build those walls, but how do you break through that in order to recognize the other side or the other parties and to build these new narratives, which I think would be essential for creating a healthier future for any kind of environment. To me, I think it's a political problem, I realize, a political question, but it seems to me like essential before even any architecture can, as we know it, can begin.
I think before I let them answer, I just want to connect to what follows tomorrow, because one of the difficulties in the process of Medellin is that there's so many scales, processes, and actors that have taken place to give a complete picture. Makes it really difficult to describe. So it goes from the fact that, for instance, a mayor that has a weekly TV program live where you can phone and will tell you about every single project that is going on in the city, right? From that simple mass media accessibility of a vision that informs the city to the very specific projects at multiple scales that are incredibly creative that we haven't seen as much today, but that we will see tomorrow. Of multiple centers, libraries, neighborhood centers, to the large infrastructure of transportation that makes them have sense to come together, and how that creates that narrative that then replicates itself over time. So I'm hoping that tomorrow we'll have the opportunity to continue to both visualize in a more specific manner the projects that enable, but also the processes that I think you're asking behind, where there was a comuna where the army would not be able to go, and some young architects had to go there and start breaking through the barriers of violence and begin to create some kind of credibility to allow the government to come in and begin to exercise some kind of action. And what was the political vision behind that? I mean, all those things are very hard to combine, from the architectural project to the social processes. I'm hoping that tomorrow we'll get into that, but of course we'll give the last note to our guest. Yeah?
I will try to answer you with two examples, two histories. But I must say that the reality is not ideal. We tell you and we explain the processes, and so it's very complex. And so we still have the question how to improve the way that we build dialogues, and we have more proximity, and we develop processes of design art, and as well that could be more connected and open the space to others to collaborate and to be part of it. So it's a process of learning. But I will give you two examples that give you some kind of answer. One is in my talk, I show you a picture of some books and films, testimonies, and I explain a little bit that one of the person that write some of the more interesting research about the social condition of our complex reality became a major after some years. So I must say that the tragedy that we have changed many things. When I'm saying the tragedy, we have a war on the streets. Medellin was the most violent city in the world, by far. Not like Mexico today and some Central American cities has a huge problem, but we have 3 more deaths per habitant in Medellin. In 1991, we have 390 deaths for 100,000 inhabitants in the city, if I am saying right. So the reality was that kind of tragedy pushed many different processes on people and opened spaces. Sometimes those processes open some spaces that give a real opportunities. So I am talking about 1995, for example, and a process that belongs to the national government put a strategic people in Medellin working with some key people and intellectuals to develop some local processes. I'm talking about in 1996, and a TV program opened the view and tried to find leaders in the barrios of Medellin and give them visibility. And the person who directed this TV program after became the mayor, was the same person that wrote the book. And another person that had been working with the community for so many years became the Secretary of Education. So this kind of proximity in relation with the real life of the barrios, and then they became some leaders in the process of political process, give them different sensibility. We have been working with the people of the community from our university for many years, and then, with some reason, the mayor invite us to be part of the government. So this give us and give so many people different sensibility and knowledge, but with a huge distance, because the social classes in Medellin are extreme, the difference is huge. So, but that process started to develop possibilities of dialogue, not in ideal form. But I am going to tell you the second history of our history today in our research center. We have a master program of urban and environmental studies and processes, and because we develop some relation with local leaders and local communities and so on, some of our professors belong to the barrios, not because we want to help them, no, because we are learning from them different ways of collaboration and different realities in the local condition. And we give some grants with some people that belong to their groups as well. So some of our students in our research center are part of the community, and they are working with us in some way. So it's not ideal, but we have the opportunity to develop a partnership in many different processes with different approach. So in some way, our university belongs to the light of the very different condition, but that kind of dialogues happens as well with the community. So this kind of conversations happens in some way, not everywhere, and connect as well some ONGs and some foundations that belongs to the private companies. So those partnerships that happens in Medellin in many different kinds, from my point of view, are the most important. That it's not easy to explain, but the process happening and the territory of the city in some way became the territory that produced that kind of processes. So we still have the question, but it's not easy. The answer is not easy.
We will. Last question. Oh, okay, then don't ask.
Well, but I would like to know more about the role played by the inhabitants in this strategy. I mean, how when they have opinion, how do you listen to them? I don't know, we saw an image of a group gathering and trying to vote something. I don't know, how is the process? How did you give the city the voice to change things? Because I think that you are recovering in a very interesting way, like an acupuncture urbanism, you are trying to recover the city for its inhabitants? How-
I could give you a simple question, a complex question. And tomorrow I will explain I don't know, Alejandro is going to explain other process, but I will explain a process that belongs to the local communities and the bottom-up logic, how we have been working with them to connect with the public policies. But most of the process that we explain you today belongs to the other logic, because we were in the government, and I was in the government when the time I was doing some of the projects, and Alejandro is in the government today. So, I believe that to have the opportunity to work with community, you must have from the beginning a strategy that permits you to define some steps, but to have as well a very open space to develop other steps and to build porosity in the processes. So, how to engage different actors and different institutions, but different groups from the beginning in relation to define the strategy of design and to inform the design from the beginning. And from my point of view, has to be with the scales and the dimension. When I talk about the scales, it's really difficult to, if you are designing a public transport system like cable cars, there is a very small space to discuss about it. But if you talk about the stations and how the itineraries that take the people from the houses, the schools to the stations, you have a lot of opportunities to engage the community and the people to define many different actions in the program. So the combination of both permit you to build a bigger dialogue as well. So that strategy, from my point of view, always has to happen. How to expand the general strategy and to open and to give as well a very robust and strong agenda to the local actions that you could develop with community as well. But if you are in the government, you have some limitations and some opportunities. And if you belong to a different agent, the university or ONG, you have as well different strategies as well. So each history as well has different similarities. So one thing that is difficult is to generalize. Generalize. Each history, one of the ways to explain the process of Medellin is take each process and project and go deeply, understanding the process of how the people be part of the process and the institutions and how the steps happens. But it's different. Share some principles, but it's really different from each example to another. And after 50 years, you could see today that some of the best examples of architecture are okay, but they are not the best programs and as well not the most solid in relation with the sustainability. But the processes that developed from the beginning, a more solid process with community after 15 years, that combines architecture and local processes today are in a better shape. So though it's really important in relation, the process is really important in relation to be part from the beginning. It's one of our lessons today.
Just to say something more about your question. The role that play the inhabitants of the city is very important in our projects. Tomorrow I will show you another project with the participation of the community. How is the participation of the community? The first situation is that we write our government plan in the barrios, in the city center, and in another space of the city with the community, the government plan. We can write with them some ideas of our government plan and about our projects. The second situation is public competitions between the architectures in the city and in the country. We made some ideas and we designed the projects with the ideas of the architects from public competitions. This is a way of the democratization of the architecture in Colombia through public competitions. And another way is that those projects, we discuss the projects with the community, and we take ideas from the community. We can change some ideas or some projects with the situation that the community like and the community recommend us in the values, for example. And this is a very, very important part of our designs. The community play a very, very important role in designs and in the construction process and in the maintenance and in the use of the buildings that we have in Medellin.
Thank you very much, Will. Thank you for the stamina of staying over, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow from 1 to 3 when we have more time to engage in discussions and to look hopefully much more precisely into all the project. Thank you very much.